Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I have this guy on each and every week, and we missed a turn last week, but we did catch up. If you follow us out on Facebook or Twitter, anywhere in our social media, you know Robert Canady's been covering local college basketball here for going on a decade at WNST. We were out together at Coppin State last week, and I'm even wearing the Compass Point hat to let people know that we finally have something that's like fall weather out on the golf course, and finally something that feels like Moonlight Madness, even if it is in Snoop Dogg and stripper poles locally here. Right, Robert?
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't get to see any of that last week out at Coppin State, but which is probably a good thing. But we did see a lot of coaches and a few players, and definitely got the basketball conversation going for the season. And I was excited to do that.
Well, all things aside here, Juan Dixon's beard was the story of. I think that stole the show at the luncheon, right?
Yeah, as I think I mentioned to a few people, to me at least, had a little bit of a LeBron look going on, with the bald head and the beard and everything, and. I think it took a few of us a minute to recognize him, but he's 3 years into the job there now. He talked more confidently. He looked more confident, and I think they're expecting good things out there this year, at least definitely from speaking to him for a few minutes. That's what I gathered.
Well, let's go through the local schools here, and I guess start with Maryland aside, right? We'll have plenty of time to talk Big Ten and talk about the Terps and where they are. And Bino Ranson's been texting me the last couple of days. I'll grab him after bye week, and we'll get Bino on here talk about the Terps a little bit. But for the local schools, UMBC, obviously Ryan Odom comes in, off the Final Four 2 years ago and where the buzz is, and he was going to go coach elsewhere, but he's not. He's still here. He's still at UMBC, and they're building that. I know your pal Pat Scary's up at Towson trying to get his thing together, Morgan, the Mount. Where are we this year locally? What can we expect as far as improvement, or maybe the one program that'll be the best program in the Beltway?
Yeah, I look for, you mentioned Pat and Towson. I look for them to maybe take a big step back to where they were, in his first 7 years there. They throughout the first year where he basically inherited, a bunch of walk-on guys and everything. But beyond that, he pretty much didn't win less than 18 games this season until last year, where then they kind of fell off in the once the conference season started. They never really got going. It was pretty much a lost season. In the last 2 years, they've dealt with a lot of transfers out, guys leaving the program, guys were asked to leave the program, and last year I think the count was 9 new faces on the roster. This year it's down to the more normal 5 or 6 that come in. So he's got some really good experience back with Brian Dobbs, who was just recently voted first team all CAA for conference in the preseason poll, and that's the first time probably since Benjamin was there that they've had a first-team selection there. So I think with the experience they bring back, I really look for them to take a big step forward. UMBC, what can you say? He's built success there. I mean, the big upset over Virginia in the tournament 2 years ago. Then last year they won 20 games again. They didn't drop off. He brings back the majority of that team.
And by the way, I don't think I talked to him a little bit about this sort of off the record, but, booking games and getting games when you're UMBC and you've slayed the giant, it must have been what it was like for Chaminade to get games back in the day, or even, quite frankly, George Mason to get games after they, or Butler, any of these schools. Once you put yourself on the map, it's hard to get games. And it took Gonzaga 15 years to start getting games, right? Like Mark Few out there, because nobody wants to see a team like that in November, December. And look, we have the benefit here with Morgan, Coppin. They've been playing maybe some less of the money games than they have in the past or whatever. But there's always a measurement for all of these schools early in the year, right? They all get together and take on giants, but it's harder for UMBC to do that these days.
Yeah, they're definitely, not going to be able to schedule like they used to. And matter of fact, as of last week, when we were out there talking to them, they still had one date to fill. Now part of that was due to Manhattan backing out at the last minute for whatever reason. So, I mean, they haven't publicly released their schedule yet because it's not done. So here we are. 3 weeks away from the season, 4 weeks last week, and they still had a game to fit in there. So,
well, they play at Georgetown, by the way, December 17th. They play at George Mason. They also play at LSU in November, late November. These games begin so early. They begin November 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever. They also play Florida Gulf Coast, which is kind of an interesting little matchup there as well. But so they have a couple of games, but they're easing into this. You know, Maryland's not playing them, so you know, Morgan State also. And I look at Coppin's schedule and I see the kinds of games that they're taking on now. Not as many, maybe, as one day where they would go out and play 7 or 8 of these crazy games out on the West Coast. There's not a lot of that for a lot of these schools locally.
No, I think, if they can get a couple big ones in there, like you said, the LSUs or the Floridas, which Towson potentially could play Florida twice this year. They're once, I think, in the down in Florida, and then they're in a holiday tournament down in Charleston. So I think you get a couple of those in there, and you don't have to load up your schedule with 7 or 8 of them, to get the money. And, there's more and more TV money out there nowadays with, the regional networks popping up and everything. So even the smaller schools are starting to get some of that. I think winning, definitely, off early is, on the coach's mind, more so maybe than in the past, and definitely more so for the, schools of the UMBC and the Towsons and everything. Coppin, they've got a home game. I think we talked about that first time since Juan's been there, that they're not playing their entire non-conference slate on the road. That they open up actually with the home game. So
they play Rider and Cornell at home early in the year, and then all their road games. But their road games aren't Kansas and, crazy stuff. I mean, their road games now are Northern Illinois, Northern Kentucky, James Madison, Montana, East Carolina, Davidson. They play UMBC in December. They do go to Miami. They go down to Miami and play, but that's Coppin. Towson plays at Florida. They also play Xavier, which is an interesting game. Towson plays Morgan on December the 4th. They play UMBC on the 12th of December. And I know there's also been a movement afoot to have Towson play UMBC and have Towson play Morgan, right?
Yeah, those three, Towson and UMBC have, at least ever since I've been on the scene, have always played pretty much every year. They rotate home and home, and generally Morgan and Loyola are in there as well. Sometimes there's scheduling conflicts that, don't allow that. Coppin's been in and out, but, those Baltimore-centric teams have always, played each other for the most part, during the non-conference season. Well, the one thing that hasn't happened that everyone talks about, seems at that event every year, this media event, is having a local tournament, to kick off the season, or sometime in the non-conference where you get all 5 of them, in the same arena for the same weekend.
Well, the Battle of the Beltways, we've tried that, right?
Yeah, I think, again, that was a little bit before my time, but I know you're well familiar with that, and some of the other, long-term coaches in the area were, but, with the schedule difficulty that we just talked about, it makes that even much more so. I talked to a couple of coaches about it last week, and they said they all like to do it, but, everyone wants to either, as many home games as they can get, or, they have these conference tournaments, which is like, it used to be you'd play them one of the holiday tournament, per year, but now some of them are playing in 2 or even 3 of them, that, where there's better exposure and better incentives to go and everything. So it, the dates and availability are just not really there to make that happen, it seems to be.
Morgan has a couple big games, too. I want to give them a little shout. They're up at Temple in November. They play at Ohio State Thanksgiving weekend as well. And Loyola also begins their season November 5th at Marquette. They also play at George Mason, but kind of an easier schedule. Loyola's kind of eased out of this post-Patsos, right? Like, after Patsos, they're the Reitz Arena's quiet lately, right? I mean, and I don't feel any buzz for that program the way when I had Patsos in my ear all the time and the place was rocking and the band was playing, right?
Well, Patsos was buzzed in himself. He didn't need the team to create buzz, but yeah, I mean, there was definitely an excitement around with him there, and they're again in transition too. I talked to Tavares Hardy, the coach there, for several minutes last week, and again, he's in his second year, so it's transition. They've got a great player. They've got an all-conference player coming back in Stepnick, and so this could be a year. They definitely had a bad year last year, in his first year in transition, and so this could be a year where they step forward and win a few more games. But I don't look for them to be, the elite of the area. I still think that'll come from either Towson and or UMBC this year. I think both of them will have good seasons, as you would expect them to have, since they've now under Scary they've established 8 years of winning, and they're owed 4 years of winning with the big tournament appearance. So I still expect those two to be class of this area, but I expect Coppin and Loyola both to have very good seasons.
Yeah, I don't want to see
over last
5
year.
and 23s anymore, right? You know what I mean? Like, let's get this thing balanced, set, win some games early in the year. Robert Canady joining us here. He has buckets and birds out on Twitter. He's also down at Compass Point Golf, where I got the slick charcoal hat. By the way, I like the charcoal hat so much that I'm going to get charcoal Baltimore positive gear from our friends at Strategic Factory as well. So I want to give them some love. Also, our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy, bringing all of our community and charity work here. Bye week next week, a lot of Baltimore positive, full steady diet of Baltimore positive awesomeness coming your way next week. And for you and for Compass Point, give me a little lowdown here, because we're about to get into basketball season. Golf is still here. I know you have tournament time. I know you have turkey shoots. I know you have craft beer opens. You have football games on the weekends. But this is a real nice time to play golf for people like you that love golf.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I've said many times, fall is my favorite time of year to play, and getting out there, try to take advantage of myself. But we're still very busy on the course. This past Monday with the government holiday, we had nearly 400 rounds out there on a Monday in October, which was unheard of.
Well, what's the biggest? How many rounds? What's maximum? So when you say 400, you got 36 holes. I mean, how many rounds? What's the record at Compass Point on a 15-hour day where the sun sets at 8:45? Right, literally.
In the middle of the summer, I mean, it would be close to 500.
Okay.
This 400 is close to pushing it.
Well, the weather has been very, very kind. Tiger Woods winning the Masters. It's been a nice year for weird scheduling where all the majors are early. But I think locally for golf courses and people who love golf here, it's been a hell of a year, right?
It really has. It's been a great year for us. Outing seasons and with just overall the regular rounds coming out, and the weather has definitely helped this fall. Even though the course could use a little bit of rain, just like everyone in the area could. But the excitement, I think, starting with Tiger in the spring, that really set it off for got a lot of people energized for the game again, and it's just kind of continued all the way through the fall. And we still have those two big events you talked about, the Craft Beer Open and the night golf on, I think, the 26th, which will be our last night golf event. It's going to be a Halloween theme, so those are still two big events that people can get in, this month, before it turns a little chilly in the air.
He is Robert Canady. He is Buckets and Birds out on Twitter. He's also down at Compass Point. You can go play a round or two and enjoy the good weather and avoid the Nationals being in the World Series and all the things that you're a Redskin guy. Are you a National guy too, or are you running around with the Walgreens logo on this week? What's happening?
Yeah, I've got my Tideless Washington Nationals hat in full wearing mode this week and everything. So I've been. I was there when they first one of the very first games when they came back to DC. I was down there in RFK Stadium to see them, and I was part of a season ticket holding plan for many years. So I'm very happy this morning. I know a lot of my Baltimore friends, probably could care less, but no, I was over the moon last night.
You know that song Christmas Wrapping, with Bananarama, they said they think they would skip this one this year. I'd take Christmas off this year. I'm going to take the World Series off next week. My wife and I are going to be eating poi and taking surfing lessons and living in a different time zone. And I just think after the bye, I'm just going to this is going to be the 1 year where it's like 1994. They skipped me in 94. I'm skipping them in 2019. But what I'm not going to skip is we began this with Juan Dixon. We talked about Coppin State, who are our partners. We're going to be broadcasting a lot of their games as we've been doing for 4 years. Thanks, Ruff and Bell and everybody over at Coppin State. We appreciate your support and your partnership. We love our partnership with the Eagles. So when you put the radio station on and you hear basketball, it's Coppin State. But Maryland, we haven't talked about them at all, and that's going to be the story, I guess, if you're a college basketball fan around here. Temple, Notre Dame, these games coming up around Thanksgiving, they'll ease into it. They got a Rhode Island game and a Holy Cross game early on. But the Big Ten thing comes right down the pipe, right? Early December, you're playing these Big Ten games now. They don't play as many tournaments and conferences and flying off to Cancun and Alaska and San Juan and wherever else is going on. This is big business for the Terps right now, and I think it's important for Turgeon that this is a good year for them, right?
Yeah, it is. And you're right on the schedule. I mean, with them being the elite and the power conference, they don't really need to go to those tournaments and everything. If one came up that I think fit the schedule and everything. I'm sure Turgeon would jump at it, but other than that, they're happy to have 12 or 13 home games and let everyone come to them during the month of December. And you do have those, the Big Ten, like you talked about, starts. I think they started that last year with a couple games in December. So you've got to be ready for those, right off the bat. Otherwise, you're starting off. Typically everyone kind of was finding themselves in December for conference season, but you get a couple big early conference games. If you're not ready for them, in December, you're starting off behind the 8 ball, 0-2, and working your way back. So, some games that definitely count early in the season, as well as some of the other ones where I don't think it's as soft a schedule. I was talking to someone about that, not too long ago. In the past, they had a lot of Maryland Eastern Shores and Americans and schools like that, and there's still a couple of those on there. But I think it's a stronger non-conference schedule than it has been in past seasons. So they bring back a veteran team as well. And again, it seems like when you're at that level, you're bringing in every year you're bringing in a couple highly touted freshmen, and we'll see. But I think I look for last year's group of freshmen, Ayala, and the group to really take a big step forward and be even better this year, and it should lead to a successful season for them. But we'll see how it all plays out.
It is fascinating that if you and I 10 years ago got to know each other, we would have looked at the schedules of all the local teams and where they're playing and how they're playing and why they're playing these road games. Maryland, just in its own little bubble, I look down and I see a schedule that Gary Williams would look at in 2004 and say, but what's his schedule? So Turgeon, obviously in the Big Ten, because they are flying to Minnesota on February 26th, and they're flying to Illinois and Champaign on February 7th, and they're flying to Indiana in the middle of January, and out to Northwestern and Wisconsin in January, and Iowa, that into November, December, the notion that we're going to go play in Alaska or Puerto Rico or wherever, they only have 2 road games before January the 10th. They play at Penn State, which isn't even a road game, and at Seton Hall, which is barely a road game. It is very, very clear that Turgeon has looked at all of this big picture where he's now making the schedule, right? Nothing he inherited, or that he wants to do nothing but sit at home, get these kids in school, have them going back and forth to the gym in November, December, because January and February kicks their asses getting on airplanes and landing where it's 12 degrees in the middle of the night in Iowa.
Right, and you saw some of that in years past with his younger teams where they just flattened out toward the end of the conference season and going into the tournament.
Yeah, Melo Trimble always looked like he didn't get enough sleep. Literally, right?
Right. And and the performances look like they didn't in some cases as well.
No, but then he got injured, and I guess that's my point. You get injured, and you got a cold, and it's February. You're playing the biggest games. Now you got to get on a plane and fly out to Indiana, and you're never where you want to be. And part of that is don't beat the guys up in November, December, and and when you're already the money's not as important, and you're not Fang Mitchell trying to fly around figuring out how you're going to pay for all of this, right? That you can play better basketball in February if you're smarter in November. And Turgeon's been around this as a player, as a coach in the Midwest, in different programs. But this is the curse of being an outlier Eastern school, playing nothing but games out in the heartland. I mean, this is the difference between going down to Winston-Salem in February and going to Iowa.
Yep. And everyone knows this move was made for football, and it's entirely different when the football team only has to do it 5 times a year, and once a week, and get on that plane a day in advance, and get the travel time in, and then they got 6 days off before they do it again. Versus, like you just said, they may be going out to Illinois with a stop in Michigan State on the way back, and just be gone the whole week. And it's entirely different travel for a basketball team than it is for a football team, and they're. I think they're definitely, like I said, scheduling for that lighter in November and December to be a little bit more rested heading into the stretch run of the conference season. No doubt. I think that was the plan. All
right, give everybody your golf spiel right now, because we got lots of stuff going on out there. I know you love your turkey shoot. I know you love the leaves out there, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be so awful anytime soon that people can't get some good golf in the next 6 or 8 weeks, right?
No, absolutely not. Just throw a quarter zip on for the first few holes, and then take it off and enjoy some sunshine. And mid-60s weather is never bad to golf in. So I would say we have at least another good month of good golf weather out there. And as far as if there's even a small group outing you want to do, All my information's on the website at compasspointgolf.com, and that's point with an E, as some people find out the hard way. So, yep, I can be reached there. But otherwise, yeah, we're looking for another good 4 to 5 weeks to wrap up the season here. But in the meantime, we'll definitely be focusing on the college hoop scene as well over the next few weeks with you.
He is Robert Canady. He's going to be hitting the golf ball down at Compass Point in Pasadena. He is going to be covering all things local college basketball at Buckets and Birds and at WNST all year long, as we always do. You can find him, me, everything up in the Buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. Our morning newspaper ships digitally each and every morning. You subscribe once, and you even get all of our Baltimore positive stuff. You're going to get my angst about the Washington Nationals in the World Series and how nothing good has ever happened for the city of Baltimore or Orioles fans because of the existence of the Nationals. So, screw them. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.